Behold, this is stacked Nyx, or at least it will be once we finish a discussion about how you might think about building Nyx to be a fun and effective all-around use case warframe. Yes, in this video I'm going to talk a lot about the thought process, or this sort of a train of thought that I use when thinking about builds, because Nyx is a really good example of where that can be helpful. This is going to be a more modular build video. I'm not going to give you a single extremely clever thing that Nyx does, because Nyx doesn't do anything like that, in my opinion, although maybe we'll find some things along the way that you'll consider interesting. No, I am going to do something like that in my other Nyx build video, but in this video I'm mostly going to talk about thinking about how to do the thing with Nyx in a way that you might like. So we're going to go through quite a few different options. If that sounds good to you, I hope you enjoy it. And if you'd like to see me play this build, or whatever we settle on as the thing that I'm going to choose for my version of this general kind of build, I'm going to do that during one of my live streams. It'll be the Saturday following this video's publication. If you're interested in that, there's details in the description, or if it's already happened, you can watch an archive of it there. All right, the first order of business in my mind is to make Nyx good at whatever things she is good at. And I think those are the most straightforward ones anyway, are Psychic Bolts and Chaos. So what do these abilities want? Chaos's default stats are actually pretty good. That radius and duration are generous base values. So let's not worry about that for a second. Psychic Bolts does not yet remove all defenses. So I'm going to start there. And again, this is going to be a very thought process-like video. I'm going to go through, we're going to start with the most obvious thing to do is to get this to 100% defense reduction. It's not very hard. You don't need very much strength, just a normal intensify. So let's do that. I think there's at least a discussion to be had about Assimilate, which I was using in the little intro segment. There's a discussion to be had about more range and duration. Chaos does have good base range and duration, but it would be good to have more. Could add a lot of range, I suppose. Now this is really large range. A range is a good stat to get a lot of, because the larger your circle is, the more area you cover by making it even larger, because that's how circles work. You could, you go big or go home with it and do overextended, but now we need more strength. So let's try using, there we are. So this is a set of mods that essentially makes Nyx good at everything that I would argue Nyx is actually good at, and in exchange, the efficiency is absolutely atrocious, and you're instantly going to run out of energy using Assimilate. So what if you reduce it? No, that's not enough strength, so this would be the only way to do it with one mod. The good thing about building Nyx this way is that when you do this, you've freed up a lot of mod space for something else. And something we're going to get to in a minute is, what can you use that for? What does that do? What is the advantage of that? When people talk about Nyx, something that I feel they always overlook, when people critique Nyx, they say, well, other warframes can infuse abilities that are better crowd control abilities than Chaos. I don't know if I would say they're better necessarily, but they're definitely adequate. Chaos is adequate. Those other abilities are different, but also adequate. They say, oh, well, you can take Ashes Seeking Shuriken, and that's kind of like Psychic Bolts. I think Psychic Bolts is almost always better, and it takes less bod space in that you don't need an augment to make it remove all defenses, but this isn't a Helminth fusible ability, whatever. But the point is, Nyx already has those things. You don't need to use a Helminth ability to give Nyx those things, because she already has them. So the question is, what do you get in exchange for not needing to get those things from a Helminth ability? What is the advantage of not needing to add those things somewhere else and having some mod space open? What can you gain from doing that? I think the reason that people don't think that it matters, that there's that opportunity cost, is because they don't know what you are missing by not having those things innately, or what Nyx is gaining by having those things innately. I'm going to futz around a few things here. So let's swap this up here and add some efficiency, because right now the efficiency is pretty bad, and make a functional build and then play it. Yeah, whatever, Aura, doesn't really matter right now. And then this slot, I guess I would like natural talent. If I'm going to leave Assimilate, I would like to be able to do that quickly. And now we have a way to stay alive. It's easy to make a warframe essentially unkillable, but this is a very efficient way to do that. You only really need Assimilate, and then you need to make sure your efficiency isn't terrible. Your duration and your efficiency, I suppose, are not terrible. And then with just this mod, you are essentially never going to die in practice, as long as you manage your energy okay, right? And you're slow, of course, but there are ways around that. We'll talk about that in a sec. you have a crowd control ability, you have a way to do more damage by removing enemy defenses. This is checking the boxes. You'll note that with this version, building this build this way, there isn't really any mod space. Now you can take off Augur Reach and Natural Talent and not lose that much. It's not that much worse without these. In fact, I am going to take them off and we'll play that version. So here we are, here are some enemies, and you might cast Chaos, really good range, and then pop into your Assimilate and use, say, a melee weapon stance or your operator to move around while you're slowed in Assimilate. You can still move around quite freely, you just need to use something other than normal parkour and movement controls. And you are tanky, you are easily able to greatly increase the damage you deal to enemies so they die really, really fast. It checks all the boxes. Let's talk about some of the things that you could add with the space that's left. One thing that isn't yet in this loadout is a companion. Now, you could add a companion that is interested in you investing some space on your warframe to gain some advantage. The most obvious example that comes to mind would be a Kubro. You could run the rest of the mecha set on your warframe. There's not much else you would be using those spaces for. Basically, what you get out of this is occasionally as you just cleave through a group of enemies, you will hit the marked enemy with something that maybe does slash or some such, and then everything in the radius will just die. Now this mod is not good on Nyx. This is not, that armor bonus is, you know, it's more armor is more armor, but if you're surviving with Assimilate, it doesn't do much, so this is not really a good mod on Nyx. What you're doing is taking advantage of the fact that you're not sacrificing much by putting this mod here. There's not a high opportunity cost for these mod slots, nor for the aura. I mean, auras in general just don't, Warframe auras are a mess at the moment. There's not a very high opportunity cost for putting these mods on. So you can just equip them and you don't get a lot. The set bonus gets more powerful. It does get a lot more powerful. You don't get a lot, but you don't lose a lot. On many other Warframe builds, this would lose you a lot. You'd be sacrificing quite a bit by using these two, mostly this mod slot, for these things, but on this Warframe, I don't feel you do. And in fact, we still have a mod slot open for a Helminth ability with an augment, perhaps, or some such. Maybe the Helminth ability will want a bit more of a stat that isn't here. The duration is a little low on this build at the moment. You know, you could add that. But anyway, the mecha set. So pretty much all the time, there will be a mark. If you kill that marked enemy with slash, essentially everything in 30 meters will just instantly die. You're not going to do this deliberately. You're just going to fight and it'll just happen. So I'll swap out my sword and shield for, say, Sigma Noctentis, also a sword and shield weapon. I like the mobility. I've just gotten used to using these on Nyx with Assimilate over the years. And this has a lot of slash. So when this kills the marked enemy, everything in the area will just die. That's fine. Something that's not a good fit is that Kubros, beast companions in general, usually rely on your warframe having respectable health to not die very quickly. And Nyx surviving this way has kind of an anti-synergy with that. One of the advantages that Nyx provides is the opportunity to survive very efficiently with very little mod investment using Assimilate, but that is not good with a Kubro. So, you know, it's not terrible. It's not just going to drop dead instantly. And if you're meleeing, then you could restore health to your Kubro. It's not the end of the world. It's not exactly synergistic or exciting. So you could go in a different direction. Let's reset here and say that you are excited about a Kubro or a beast companion. Now remember, you might not be specifically excited about this specific thing, but this is an example of how you might go through the mindset of, well, I do find it interesting to use the extra space to get this, you know, mecha bonus or whatever. There are a variety of other things, but that particular iteration of the build doesn't do the thing. We don't have to use Assimilate. And a lot of people hate Assimilate. A lot of people don't like this because while it does make you survive, you don't die very efficiently from a modding perspective, it makes you really slow. And for many, many, many people, the thing they like about Warframe is that you move very quickly, like that there's a lot of parkour, right? I totally get that. You don't have to use this. In fact, Nyx is a Warframe that is pretty early in the game. You can acquire Nyx quite early, so maybe that's a good way to go. So we'll do that. And then from there, so you've got the strength for psychic bolts, now some range, just some general use range, stretch, cunning drift, augur reach, very nice. And then armor, so generally Arcane Guardian. So it'd be nice to have some more duration, sure. This is in many ways just an easier to play version of what we just had. Now, off screen, I've finagled the melee weapon, the Sigma Noctantis, to have some lifesteal, so the Kubro will automatically get healed. Link health links lifesteal from your melee, or at least most sources of healing on your Warframe. And it's a Weeping Wounds build as well, so again we have the slash, oh boy. But yeah, the defenses are not great. You are quite reliant on using Chaos to make sure enemies largely just don't attack you. If you do get attacked, while these are acceptable basic defenses, they're not great. At higher levels, that it's not incredible. I'm not trying to convince you that it is. It's not. But it is something you can play in most levels of gameplay, and you will be perfectly fine. So if you want to do this, let's just finish what we were doing. What Kubro, or what Beast Companion? It doesn't have to be a Kubro, you could do a Kavat. You could use an option that I've been really liking lately, which is a Magi Protocyte. So these things are going to charge into combat, blind everyone. They have a finisher combo with their own ability. They're just brawler companions. And of course, you've got the mecha set pieces as well. Just a basic, you're choosing basically these mods, it's always these mods, and then the 2 precepts from that species. That's what I do on most Kubro builds anyway. And this one is essentially just a fighter, and you can use Mecha Overdrive to make it do very good status output. You just need a primary that has a lot of status chance. It will do slash very consistently. It will be able to kill level 100 whatever enemies by itself, not reliably because of the AI, but it's something that it can do. So if you want to do that, that's an option. But what about Helminth abilities? What about just something that isn't the mecha set in these spots? What do you do with that? Before we go on, of course, there are options like Vigorous Swap. And to increase your tankiness, you can, to some extent, add something like Adaptation to what we had before. This will help, sure, but there will still be cases where your effective health without Arcane Guardian and Adaptation active is just so low, and Nyx doesn't have exceptional base health anyway, that you'll just get one-shotted by something if you don't have shield gating up. And these won't be ready in time to save you. That is the drawback of, yes, you can put Adaptation, Vitality, and Arcane Guardian on every single Warframe, but if they don't have any other way to make themselves a little more durable, they are prone to just exploding to a stiff breeze unless they happen to ramp these up a bit before. Then you won't just get randomly one-shot. Again, this is kind of good on every loadout. You can just add this in and you get a very large amount of base damage, but maybe not all the time if you're not swapping religiously. Still a very good mod, and if you have extra space, there is always an opportunity cost to a mod slot because this mod exists. You could always be getting a bunch more damage and extra serration on all of your weapons by equipping this mod. So that is some of the base opportunity cost. When I said I think some people don't realize that there is an opportunity cost with those mod slots, this is the kind of thing I was talking about. And we're in the chair. What do we got? So there are a few obvious ones, but what I want to start with are a few things that I think you obviously don't want, but I hear suggested in the comments of my videos a lot. So I thought I would explain why I don't think that they're that exciting. So I said before that one of the things that you're getting with Nyx is that you have the basic tool, really good versions of the basic tools, a way to make enemies more vulnerable to damage or to do more damage yourself with psychic bolts, and a way to control enemies to make them not attack the objective or you, at least very, very inconsistently. You're much safer than you would be without it. That's what Chaos is providing. So anything that is just like you throw out a random crowd control ability, Breach Surge is a very good ability overall. It's got a lot of overlap with things Nyx already does. That might excite you. You might be looking forward to comboing them. That's not a bad idea. Something like Roar. You already have a whole ability that pretty much just makes you do more damage. Psychic Bolts. It makes enemies more vulnerable to your damage. Roar does it in a different way. That's not bad. If you have both, you should activate Roar and use Psychic Bolts. If you had Roar on, if Nyx's fourth ability was already by default just Roar, you would use both. I'm just saying that this is something that you already have. Even with no damage boosting ability, you already do enough damage. That's why this does not excite me. It is not a bad or unsensible choice. I'm looking for something that doesn't add something that Nyx already has. So anything that is just a random crowd control ability is out. Anything that is just a random damage ability is out. So again, that includes things like Shooting Gallery, which is a random crowd control and random damage ability. Shock, which has an augment that makes it a random damage ability. Again, both good, just something I feel Nyx already has. Resonator, a random zone control ability, especially with the augment in the Exilus slot. A great ability to infuse, but something Nyx kind of already does. A lot of the time this won't really do anything because you've already cast Chaos, or Chaos won't do anything because you've already cast this, right? Something maybe closer to what I'm looking for is Elemental Ward. I'm more interested in the heat mode. I mentioned before that one of the problems with using Arcane Guardian and Adaptation on Nyx, like with many Warframes, is that it's going to work most of the time, but you will sort of explode to a stiff breeze if you don't get hit lightly first. If the first hit is a lot of damage, then you might just die. This will largely prevent that by giving you way more base health, and it scales with strength, so you'll get more than just 200. You could add more strength too, since this won't really need an augment. The Toxin mode, reload speed, is valuable on a lot of weapons. It makes bows essentially just have higher fire rate if you like that on a bow weapon. Having a weapon that has a really long reload, or maybe has a small magazine so you reload really often, that can be really powerful. The base value is good and it scales with strength, so that's something solid. That's an option. I should probably talk about Larva. This will probably come up. To me, this is still overlap with Chaos because ultimately it's a crowd control ability. Now, it's also an enemy grouping ability. It does also group enemies up. That is a damage ability in a way. It's most analogous to a damaging ability. Again, a phenomenal Helminth ability. It's very, very powerful. This is a great ability. You could put this on any Warframe without knowing anything about how the person intended to use the Warframe, and you would be likely to be giving them something valuable. Sure, you could go for something the exact opposite, Master's Summons. If you wanted to do that Kubro thing, this is sometimes a good ability. One of the things that's powerful about this ability is that it instantly revives your companion. It says that it heals them and teleports them next to you. If they're downed, it also instantaneously revives them as well. Not a huge deal, but if you like playing with a companion, Nyx is a Warframe that is about what you like. You might want this ability. This wouldn't be a bad place for it. A Warframe that's just got a lot of room, give yourself a companion suite. That sounds cool. Quiver. This is an interesting one. The main thing you're getting here is stealth. This is a different kind of objection for me. Why do you want to be stealthed as Nyx specifically? Like, what is the advantage of being stealthed specifically as Nyx? And there might be people that will say, well, this is a completely different kind of utility Nyx doesn't have. Yeah, but if you can already make enemies not attack you, and you can already increase the damage you're dealing to enemies, what does I mean, are you going to use this for spy missions? I said you might. It's fine if you want to. I'm just making the point that if you line up all the Warframes in the game and think about who you might want to add a stationary stealth ability to, I find it difficult to believe that with your arsenal of Warframes, Nyx is first in line for that thing. But maybe she is, which is completely fine. Just certainly not true for me. If you've been playing Warframe a lot lately, and especially if you've been watching other YouTubers make Warframe videos, you may have noticed that there is an ability that I did not mention that almost never doesn't come up this deep into a conversation about the Helminth system, and that was on purpose. It's Dispensary. Obviously, when you get to this point in a discussion about the Helminth system on a Warframe that doesn't particularly need anything, the question becomes, why wouldn't you just give them an ability that barfs up more energy? And the answer is, you would. That's exactly what it makes sense to do. However, I want to discuss something that there's only very rarely a good reason to talk about, which is Well of Life instead. This is almost always literally accomplishing the exact same thing as Dispensary, but worse. However, if you have a lot, like really a lot of mod space free on a Warframe, it might be better in an interesting way. I will explain. Well, and when I say I'll explain, what I mean is I'm going to infuse it and do the thing. I'm not just going to, anyway, whatever. One of the things that is going to benefit you here is that you're getting health orbs, which can let you use health conversion, which kind of gets around the problem of Arcane Guardian, but I'm going to talk about that in a second. For that reason, I'm going to remove Absorb because I'm not going to use Assimilate with this approach. If you do not want to remove Absorb, Assimilate, whatever, I take off Mind Control, of course. This has been the elephant in the room. We'll talk about it way more in the other build. Anyway. Okay, back to what was here before. Again, this was the sort of basic shell where you've gotten most of the value out of Chaos, and Psychic Bolts is removing all enemy defenses. You do have base health. You're gonna survive with health, but that's it. There's nothing else here. Why Well of Life? What's going on here? This ability has an augment. When you kill enemies, they barf up 4 health orbs, and they can do an energy orb. If you then add Equilibrium, you get 100 energy when you use this ability that costs 25 energy. You also heal, I suppose. Well, I don't think Well of Life is a good ability by itself, but it certainly doesn't do nothing. It also heals you. Fair enough. This takes 2 mod slots. If you were to use Dispensary instead, to swap this out for Dispensary, you could take this off, and Equilibrium will turn Dispensary's Super Health Orb, which is worth 100 health, into just as much energy as Pool of Life would give you. And also Dispensary reliably barfs up energy orbs. So it's more energy, right? Well, this ability, Well of Life, does do something. It does heal you, I suppose. Again, I don't think this is that exciting. It doesn't do nothing. The discussion here is this better than what Dispensary is doing? And there are very, very few situations in which it is. But I think that if you're interested, this doesn't require you to wait. It doesn't require you to use Dispensary and then wait for this stuff to come out and wait for it to come out again. You can use this, very rapidly kill the single enemy, and then use it again and again and again and again, and leave an absurd amount of health orbs and stuff on the ground. That might interest you. That's not necessarily bad. It also has the benefit of giving you just more health orbs. The Super Health Orb from Dispensary does not give you 4 health orbs. This, again, almost never matters, but it can matter if you want to use something like health conversion. This solves the problem I mentioned before about using Adaptation and Arcane Guardian, 2 methods of survivability that require you to get hit not just once or twice either, first, before you are tanky. This means that your base armor will be very high before you take any damage, which means you probably will not explode to a stiff breeze. Just to be 100% clear, you can do everything that we've mentioned so far on any Warframe. You don't need to do this on Nyx. What's special about doing this on Nyx is that we are starting to consume an awful lot of mod slots to do something not bad at all, but definitely very mod slot happy. If there were things that your abilities were doing that benefited from a lot of power stats, you would really be wasting that space. But on Nyx, you're really not. There's not much you're losing by doing this instead. So you have the freedom, you have the, the lack of marginal problems to be able to just slap on all this stuff if you want to, if this is something that interests you. You have a ridiculous source of energy. There's no way you need anywhere near this much energy as Nyx. As a matter of fact, you have so much energy that I would reckon you should probably just take off Intensify, slap on a rank 10 Blind Rage, let the efficiency just be complete garbage because you do not need to worry about your energy at all anymore, and allow yourself the 38.75 energy indulgence of this Well of Life, which will give you a huge amount of energy with Equilibrium. You can now run Overextended without ruining your ability to use the full potential of Psychic Bolts. You have your full Psychic Bolts, you have max range, and the only drawback is you've got a bunch of efficiency. You will notice that this is almost the exact same build as we started with. I just added this Pool of Life Equilibrium thing, and then now we need to make space for health conversion again. Whoops. So there isn't, strictly speaking, room for health conversion with my version of the setup. I'm just going to take off Cunning Drift. You build it however you want. I don't have that much form on Nyx. But anyway, as a final product, this is what you get. Chaos from huge range to make sure we do not die, because at this point you're still quite vulnerable. Cast Well of Life on this happy customer. Deactivate, get a ton of health orbs, and you can't pick them up. There it is, folks, every single time. If you have full health, you can't pick up health orbs and waste them, even if they would gain you energy. The main thing is Synth Fiber. Because this gives you a benefit from a health orb, even if you're at full health, this means you can now pick up health orbs at will. Even if you don't need any health from them, you could just always pick up health orbs now, which means that you can use health orbs as just straightforward energy orbs. Note that Mecha Empowered now doesn't really do anything. And we're off to the races. Let's start again. Chaos is active. Now we'll kill this happy customer like that, get a bunch of energy and health conversion stacks. Maybe we have another happy customer back here, perhaps? As you can see, we're not dying just fine. Mostly enemies just aren't attacking because they're attacking each other. But even if enemies start to shoot me, I have a lot of base armor now because I now have the benefit of health conversion. Pretty nice. I mean, it's pretty active. You know, you need to be casting a lot if you want the benefits from things, but I don't think that's bad. If that's what you want, then I think this is a good fit. I mean, it involves a lot of fiddling around, but again, Nyx being uncompetitive as a warframe for a specific task, I feel like if you want to play Nyx, this may very well be for you, or something like it. At the very least, I think this is a Nyx build that we can all agree is stacked. And speaking of stacked, oh, well, okay, let's get those off of there. Remove my health conversion stacks. Hey, go, 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 go. As I was saying, this fashion frame. Okay, Taxon is still in the background. This fashion frame. Okay, finally I get to talk about whatever this is. I just thought it made Nyx look kind of heroic and exciting and powerful. I also really like the Oskira armor set in general. I really like these knee pads. And I felt like they looked good with this combination of the prime details and the psycho skin. This is one of the oldest cosmetics I own. I've often wanted to make more stuff about Nyx, which is why this ended up being so long. What else is there to say here, really? I chose to use the flame ephemera. I don't know why. There is a sort of effect here, an animation that happens. I think it's when you have combo. There it is. Yeah. There it is. You can see that this Syandana kind of shoots out smoke, which I thought looked really cool in combination with the Vengeful Flame ephemera. You might be asking, Zandy, what always possesses you to mix up the deluxe skin helmet and the base skin? I basically just want to harass you. I just want to frustrate people in the comments. Although, you've actually all been really nice about the fashion appearances, so thank you. I'm glad you like it. Not a lot else to say here. I just liked the idea of having Nyx have this kind of weirdly sexy, the skin kind of weirds me out, but it's, you know, it's sleek. It gives me Get in the Robot Shinji vibes, and I decided that this sort of unearthly seafoamy color was a color that made me think psychic warframe, but not in the way that the second fashion frame that is for the build that actually uses mind control makes me think psychic or psychedelic or mind control warframe. You'll notice that something happened here in this video. I suggested that you could use the extra space freed up by Nyx having really undemanding abilities or very simple abilities, using, for example, a Kubro, a beast companion, which might want you to have some health, so you could rely on not Assimilate, but instead health and armor. But then if you want to rely on armor, then you die really quickly. So then that led to that whole Well of Life, Pool of Life, Equilibrium, dispensary comparison thing, which gives you the armor up front so that you don't die while surviving with health. But then you want a Sentinel. Well, you can use the synth mods on any companion, but there's less room, so then maybe you're interested in a Sentinel. And then there's the whole discussion about, didn't you just invalidate the entire reason for not surviving with Assimilate in the first place? And the answer is yes, you totally did. And that is what I wanted to give you an example of. I think that mindset, that thing that we did in this video, it was longer than usual, but that thing that we just did in this video together, that thing is the thing I usually do when I evaluate a warframe. And to me, it's the thing that the developers, Digital Extremes, does not do when they build a warframe. That can be good and bad. Sometimes it leads to these really emergent, interesting strategies. Sometimes it leads to warframes seeming fine, but then just being kind of a mess when you go to build them. And this is the kind of thing that, in oversimplified, in passing discussions about Nyx, never comes up. It's way too complicated to discuss in a short period of time. You kind of have to get your hands dirty and do it. You can run a bunch of other different ways of thinking about Nyx and still come to this place. But I'm very interested to hear, especially in this video, from you in the comments. Did you have this experience when you built Nyx? Do you have a different stacked Nyx build? Did you go through a mindset like this, but then you found yourself arriving at different Helminth abilities at the end? What were they? Tell me. I'm very interested to hear. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I look forward to playing it more and showing you the sillier Nyx strategy that I have in mind for the next video in Nyx's Framework week. It's maybe more structured and actually sort of good compared to this. We'll see. You decide for yourself.